Hello, and welcome to a special episode of Curling Legends podcast. Colleen Jones sadly passed away on November 25th, 2025. I never did record a full Curling Legends podcast conversation with Colleen. I'll explain why in a moment, but I did record with her a decade ago on a different show. This episode is a re-release from an earlier podcast I was involved with called Around the House. That show began when Jordan Baldick of Winnipeg got in contact with myself and Gerry Guerts of Curling Zone. It was a panel show where we would discuss the topics of the day in curling, and we would often have special guests. On January 28th of 2015, Colleen Jones joined myself and Gerry Guerts. Jordan wasn't available for this episode, so you won't hear his voice, but you'll hear a little bit of me and quite a bit of Colleen and Gerry discussing the topics of the day, most notably a preview of the 2015 Scotties. There'll be a wide range of other topics discussed. Parts of it may even feel a little bit like a Curling Legends conversation. Around the House was the early incubation of what became Curling Legends. And it was interesting when I reached out to Colleen when I started Curling Legends, her immediate reaction was, "Why? We already did that," in reference to this episode. And when I was hoping to meet with her at an event and record, she suggested that I go meet with Kim Kelly. And Colleen was right. I met with Kim at the 2017 Canada Olympic Curling Trials, and we had a fantastic conversation. And you can hear that on episode 33 of this podcast. But before you go back and listen to that episode, stay here with Gerry Guerts, myself, and Colleen Jones as we discuss curling on January 28th, 2015.
Very good.
That's good.
How about yourself?
No complaints.
That's good.
No complaints.
When do your senior playdowns start?
Another 3 weeks to get good.
3 weeks?
Or is it 4? I might even have 4 weeks left.
Do you find at this stage you need to, but after all of those years, I mean, you've certainly got your 10,000 hours in. Do you still have to practice?
You know, isn't that funny? You would think at 10,000 hours plus, I probably have way more than 10,000 hours. And you're right. So it's probably the psychological part that makes me think, oh, I haven't been on the ice enough. I haven't. But funny, I was just with Mark Dacey. He had to get last chance to get to the Brier provincial here. And he said, I just didn't throw enough rocks this year. So I kind of think even when you get to 10,000 hours, you still need a solid base to
stay
reconnect
sharp.
with it.
And there's probably also a drop-off. I mean, you got to get to 10,000 hours to get good, but then you get to 15 or 16,000 hours, and you start to get bad, maybe. Or depending on how old you are at that point, your body doesn't do what you want it to anymore.
Yeah. Luckily, my body still does what I want it to, but I think it's such a head game, right? I think curling's such a head game that for me, the only way I can play well is to get 10,000 hours in every year. That's a bit of an exaggeration. But it's my psyche is only the people who work hard are going to win. So as soon as I cut it back, as soon as I cut practice back a bit, it's the head that gets in my way. So I just have to kind of convince my head.
There's a great story about Bruce Litsky. Are you familiar with the golfer? He used to hit a pretty good slice as a consistent drive, but he never practiced. And one of his caddies, he was a new caddy one year, and one of the other players or other caddies said, I'll bet you he won't practice over the off season, over the winter. So he put a banana peel under his driver head cover. Sure enough, when the next tournament came around, say like 2-3 months later after the winter break, and back in those days they didn't play year round. Sure enough, there was a banana peel under the driver cover.
Right.
So some people just don't maybe need all of it. I mean, Mike Riley was a guy who was fascinating in Manitoba. He would every few years he'd sort of put a squad together. I mean, he certainly put the hours in when he was young, but he didn't play near as much as a lot of the guys.
We should probably save some of this for the show, shouldn't we?
Well, I'm already recording. We started.
This is off topic.
We're on, Gerry. So welcome everyone to Around the House podcast. Jordan's not with us today, so myself, Kevin Palmer, Gerry Guerts out in Ontario, and we have the famous or infamous Colleen Jones joining us from. Where are you right now, Colleen?
I'm somewhere by the Atlantic Ocean. Yeah, I'm in Halifax.
Wonderful place. We were talking earlier about that I love that city. It's been had a couple trips out there. Maybe our first topic and something we want to chat a little bit about is what's going on out in that part of the world as it relates to curling. Colleen, and I know there'd been some, recent comments about relegation that had come out across the national media, and that, this is the first year we've got a pre-qualification for the Brier, and there's 2 maritime provinces that are involved.
Of course, Mark Dacey being involved in that possibly as well.
Yeah. I hate the relegation idea. I really do. And not just because I'm from the East. I think the Brier system, the way it was great. I think the Scotties system, the way it was great. It's a true national championship, and we're going to lose a little bit of that. And so what happens this year when you don't know, for example, whether Nova Scotia is going to have a team in it, we all know those famous Nova Scotian fans who go to the Brier every year, plan their vacation around it, spend a lot of money in the host city. They wear their sou'westers, they've got their blue nose on. You know of whom I speak. Suddenly, would you risk the airfare and book a vacation if you didn't even know your team was going to play in the Brier? And I don't know the benefit of it at the end of the day. I don't know why somebody in their, boardroom thought, oh, let's have a Team Canada on the men's side. The Brier's always done well, right? I mean, Team Canada in it, it's nice, although it's a bit of a, not really kind of Team Canada this year, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's turned into a bit of a farce this season.
It's just, the women really needed it. The growth of the women's game, when you think of how much the women's game, we only got on board. I remember playing in the 1979 Lassie. Let me take you way back to the prehistoric era. There were maybe 100 people in the stands to watch Lindsay Sparks win that Lassie that year in Montreal. 100 people. Ditto for the following year in Edmonton. In my first Scotties, the first year Scott Paper took over as sponsor in 1982 in Regina. They promoted the crap out of it. They did a banged up job in the 5 months leading up to it. They sold tickets. The Agrodome suddenly had 6,000 fans in it, right? That's how young the women's game is. So they needed Team Canada in order to promote the sport, in order to get people out there, in order to have a star face, right? The men have never needed that. The Brier's done just fine on its own because they're able to drag in, the Northern Ontario Moose people and the Moose Call and the Blue Nosers from Nova Scotia. And it's something you plan your vacation around. I think they're going to lose that. I think it's not needed to help the game grow.
Yeah, I think some of the trade-offs there are certainly. I tend to fall more on the fence myself. I see some of the benefits of it, but at the same time, I understand the issues with what it could mean to a provincial association and missing the Brier. I was talking to Damien Layton from New Brunswick, and their funding is very much dependent upon where they place at national events. So for New Brunswick, for example, should they miss the Brier or the Scotties, now all of a sudden, their rankings within their province for their sport are going to go down, and in New Brunswick, the top 10 sports get funded. That's what he was saying. So
and when you take that a step further and think of, it wasn't that long ago that Russ Howard, when he was representing New Brunswick, was in the Brier final. That Jimmy Sullivan was in the Brier final from New Brunswick. That Mark Dacey's been in several. Sean Adams. These are Nova Scotian teams that inspire other Nova Scotian kids to play. If you don't get to the big show, and I know we could argue all day that, there are other events, but there's only the Brier and there's only the Scotties still that have, if you're looking, at the mega championship that people remember year after year. You tend not to remember, who won the Players last year? So I think in order to facilitate the growth of the sport and encourage young kids to play, they've got to see their player at the Brier. And also, if you look at the history of the Canadian Junior Championships, the Atlantic Province's teams, if you look, it's like a who's who. The number of Atlantic Provinces kids who have won the Canadian Juniors or been in the final. Massive. And yet now they need to know they've got that next carrot to play for. So I think it misses the mark there.
There's also a long history, partly too, because you're out east, and we all know that settlers moved west. So there's sort of this idea that curling, its history is very much situated in the western provinces, or I think a lot of people in the West like to believe that. But there's a long history. I mean, the Mayflower Club, as an example, has a long and storied history. The out east, the game itself has certainly been played longer than it has out here.
Well,
I believe Montreal is
it was
actually the oldest club in the country.
Yeah.
Sorry, Colin.
Or is it my club, the Halifax Curling Club? 1812 it was founded, and the Scottish Highlanders were curling on the Halifax Citadel in their spare time, right? So it doesn't, it's just, I just don't know at the end of the day what bringing Team Canada on the Brier side does for it. I don't know what bringing Northern Ontario on the women's side does for the women's. I think curling is only as strong as its weakest link, and you've got to make sure that the sport continues to be strong in the Atlantic provinces. I remember prior to Jack McDuff winning the Brier in 1976, I believe, curling in the East was deader than dead. It was, and ditto for Quebec, right? I mean, when Jimmy Ursel won, it did a lot for that province. But because of the expense now, because of how the season is set up, that you need to play in all of those major fields for points, they're all out west. I don't know, Brad Gushue's traveling budget right now must be massive. But he's the only guy in the Atlantic provinces doing that right now because of the expense and the time off work and the time away from family. So we're already handicapped somewhat. So taking away the Brier spot, I don't want to say it's going to be a death knell, but I remember curling here in the 60s and 70s, and it was a deader than dead sport. You had to explain people what it was like, and it's not like that anymore. Gushue's win did a lot. Dacey's win did a lot. Having Russ Howard has really helped the sport a lot, and I think we're going to lose a little bit with this move. And I think you never know where that next Olympic champion's going to come from, and I think they need to keep feeding the sport down here.
I think, that leads into a good discussion there with, you're talking about Gushue, but I think there's now another team that's kind of broken through this year. That's Adam Casey's team. And they've started to make some waves out of PEI. And one of the questions that I might have is that, when teams are going to the Brier and they know they're not good enough to win, do they lose the incentive to really have, to really make themselves better? And,
I think
does
it's
relegation change that? Like you look at Adam Casey, what they've done this year. Sorry, go ahead.
Right. I think Adam Casey's team or Mark Dacey's team, another really strong team from here.
Only one of those two could be at the Brier. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and you need to plan your year out, and that year should include the Brier. You look at a guy like Brad Jacobs from Northern Ontario. How many times prior to his winning did he get to the Brier and had just middle-of-the-road Briers, right? Every time he went, he learned something about how to be better, how to be stronger. Same with Dacey. He got to the Brier often enough. And you can bet, I'll bet you money right now, Brad Gushue will win the Brier sometime, right? Because he keeps getting better. And that's an advantage. Like if you're Kevin Martin curling in Alberta and you've got Randy Furby, that you're always battling, of course you're going to get better. Of course Mike McEwen's going to get better because he's locking horns with Jeff Stoughton all the time. Here, you need to inspire yourself to get better, but then you need the national championship in order to say, okay, here, we need to go back to the drawing board and work on this. So
I guess that's something, Colleen, that you kind of laid the groundwork on how to make that possible, during your title run in the early 2000s, is that you guys didn't tour, you didn't really cash be a whole lot, and you did it by training and practicing. And you don't really see even, a lot of teams even taking that model as far as you really did.
Yeah. And they should, not to say what I did was right, but the traveling, after a while, you have children, you have a career, you need to let those things be your priority, right? I mean, curling's awesome, but at some point, as soon as children enter into the equation, and it's probably why a lot of women give up the sport, is because they can't keep missing hockey practice or parent-teacher meetings, and the same for men, but it seems to be a little different.
I think we get a little bit of a
what I kind of tried to copy, there were two things I tried to copy. One was, I thought to myself, how come Annette Norberg or Elizabeth Gustafsson are able to dominate at the world level and be in really an outpost of curling? I know Sweden's they've got Nicholas Edin and they've got the Maria gal now, but basically they don't have a lot of competition. Pal Trulson, same thing. I remember having a really good conversation with Pal going, how, when you've got nobody, are you able to keep being this rock steady? And, they said, it's practice, it's competing against men, which we did for many years. Don Bartlett led us in his cash bailout in Gander, for example. That was huge. Even if we were getting our butts kicked, we didn't just throw away the opportunity to learn more about what we were doing. And then, so I kind of looked at Nova Scotia as like a curl. If you were in Sweden curling or Switzerland, how do those people become world dominant when they're not in the mecca of curling, like a Winnipeg or a Edmonton now? How do they do it? So that's what I sort of looked at it. We really, while we didn't travel to women's fields, we stayed here and played against the men. I'll never forget playing in a bonspiel in Bridgewater, Nova Scotia. We had Mark Dacey one game, who we beat, and followed by Brad Gushue, and Gushue stood on his head to beat us. So those opportunities gave us phenomenal insight in how to get better, how to make shots, and all of that sort of. What I discovered too is that men can be tight and light all day and still make the shot because they've got those incredible sweepers. But
Well, and you mentioned the mecca of Edmonton. I don't know if you're aware, the city playdowns were canceled in Edmonton this year due to lack of entries, and all of those teams made it to the Northerns.
Wow.
What once was
Shocking.
a mecca doesn't always become a mecca, and things can turn around fairly quickly. But it's really interesting how you took an approach to think of us of your team and your area almost more as a European nation than part of Canada.
Yeah.
Which is true. Canada is so massive that the curling cycle sort of shifts around, and the opportunity to play better competition has, for the most part, situated itself in several provinces. But I mean, I've heard over the years where people complained about, lack of opportunity for CTRS points in Western Canada versus Ontario. And there's all of these funny discussions, right, Gerry, that go on about where and who gets more competition. But I think it's becoming so national that to really get the competition, if you work hard at it, you're going to need to travel, and you're going to need to make a different level of commitment. It's harder to play, locally anymore, almost anywhere. It's really getting to that point.
True. But, there's two things at work. One is the importation of players, that there's now no borders almost, that people will, no matter, the days of having 4 people from the Mayflower Curling Club who've just curled at that club go on to win are rare, right? Because everybody's jumping provinces and moving. So that's one thing. But the second thing, and I remember having a conversation with Kevin Martin about this years ago, just as the kind of, it was during the boycott, when the players were boycotting the Brier in order to facilitate the growth of the professional side of the game. And he said, we're going to see 2-tiered curling. We're going to see the A teams, and then we're going to see the teams that were almost A, but not quite, now on very much a B circuit, not wanting to compete or even try for the Brier. And I think that's, both a good and bad thing for the sport. I think it's, I
think it's the evolution.
Shame that Edmonton was able to not field a team like that, or not be able to fill their
play down
first stage. It's their first
play
stage.
Down. That's
first stage, but an area where
shocking, and that's concerning.
Yeah, where historically you'd have 30 plus teams, even not too long ago, and then there was 7. And and it's just starting to, and Winnipeg similar, but you're right that the A level is still improving, and certainly Canada is continuing to be at the forefront of the game. Now, one thing that is coming up in the next little while, was just recently announced, is the expansion of the Grand Slams. So Rogers, who does not sponsor this podcast, but does own 68% of curling at this point now. I'm not sure the exact numbers, but they, and maybe this is an opportunity to own more of it, but is going to expand to 7 or possibly 8 over the next 2 years. And then I guess, Gerry, even there's going to be some considerable addition to purses over the next 2 years. I saw $1.5 million, $2.5 million. Is this the question a lot of people want to know is this just going to become a continued tour for the top, 8 or 12 teams, with all of these other teams relegated, as Colleen mentioned, still down to a shrinking B circuit?
Well, I think you look at the way the slams are looking at. There's only one event being added to the fall tour schedule, so you're probably not going to see a huge change in how teams approach Grand Slams and World Curling Tour events at the end of the day, because that's only one additional event in that spot. What they are looking to add is more events after Christmas and to extend the season a little bit later. And the whole idea is to add events that allow teams to qualify in different routes as well. We're talking about different formats and stuff like that. One of the events we're looking at is a potential events style format where it's a single knockout to win the title.
Woo!
Like a March Madness.
Yeah, like you would get in your club bond spiel, where you have an A event, a B event, a C event, all these extra events as consolation. The consolation events will still be worth enough money that they're worth winning and worth getting deep into the playoffs in. But to win the main event, the trophy at the end of the weekend, you have to win all your games. And I think that creates some drama right out of the gate.
Yeah, that's exciting.
And
I think that's phenomenal. And
what do you think, Colleen, of this?
Yeah.
Well, what do you think of this expansion of 7 and 8 Grand Slams, and certainly a lot more women's participation as well? Gerry telling me that there'll be up to 6 events for women, and a growth at that level. What are your thoughts?
I think it's great. I mean, and the exposure is great for curling. The prize money is legit, and that it's also including more women's, because the women's game just keeps growing. And
the TV numbers are quite high. Gerry was telling me before.
The women's numbers beat the men's numbers at the skins game.
Really?
Yeah. Well, women's curling's always come pretty darn close to the men's side for ratings, period. And there have been times when it has outperformed. So, and you're not going to get that in a lot of other sports, period, right? I mean, curling in this country, from a ratings point of view, has always been just amazing. So more of it on TV, I think, makes a lot of sense. And I think if players can compete for bigger prizes and somehow make this something big, I can foresee when they'll be able to make a legitimate living at it. So I think it's a great thing. And I love the idea of creating the different drama with the event, because otherwise, if in the summer, do you ever turn on the TV and see yet another golf tournament and you go, which one is this? Okay, no, I don't want to invest my time in this one. It's not, it's just the same old. I think creating the drama of, you've got a, single knockout is great. I think the 5 rock rule is exciting. I think those kind of things keep fans' interest.
The match play, I'm really looking forward to the match play event in Fort McMurray. It's only men's teams this year. I don't know if that'll continue into the future, but I think that'll be fascinating.
I think that event's always going to be men's, just because of the conflicts with women's world championships. So you can't run a what you call a Grand Slam against the worlds, because then you're losing your credibility right there, right?
Isn't one concern right now, just even you think about expanding to 8 events, is it going to be difficult to fit 8 events into a schedule and get even the same interest around those events? I mean, at some point,
I don't think
we
so.
Hit a saturation factor, or do we will see potentially teams not participate in all 8 slams? They just may not be able to, and maybe
you're
that's
probably going to have some of that. You're going to have some situations where teams choose not to participate in them all, especially the mid-level. The bottom half of the slam fields, they just won't necessarily be able to afford to travel across the country. But what that does is that opens up opportunities for more local teams to qualify. Sounds like at least 1, maybe 2 slams next year are going to be in the east coast of the country, and this opening season event that we're talking about, 32 team single knockout with great consolation events, could very well end up in the east coast as well. And you're not going to get teams from, the B teams from Ontario or definitely Western Canada traveling to that event. So what you're going to get is opportunities for the local region to play in an event like that. And I think that is great for regional growth within the country as well. And I think see more opportunities for teams.
Now, are the dollars that I read in the article, Gerry, legit? I mean, I saw 1.5 million next year, and then they're
1.5 million works out to, when you think about it, there's 7 men's events next year and 5 women's. That's 12 events, right? Right now, each one of those events gives away $100,000, so that's $1.2 million.
Gotcha.
Jeez, even simple math is hard.
This is a math show.
Well, he didn't let me speak. I would have jumped right in, but
so that's that's 1.2 million. So while the numbers sound huge, it's probably going to be similar next season. But that it works out to like 120,000 or so per event, which is we're starting to expand it a bit. You get more events, there's more money. But then the next year they go to 2.5 million for 14 events. Now do the math there, and we're getting closer to 175,000 per event.
Well, yeah, and I was wondering, where is that money coming from?
Well, TV.
From TV. Okay, so that's part of the TV generated numbers that they're projecting, or they're expecting, or they're committing, or we don't know.
The one thing about curling and TV right now, and this is where the Grand Slams, I think, have a great opportunity to capitalize, and where the Brier is going to struggle over the next little while, is that the revenues for the Grand Slams are driven by TV. Sponsorship, the numbers, all that stuff. The game is getting younger, and I think you can see that with the teams on the ice. And I think these stereotypes in the game are more difficult to apply these days.
Are you saying that having teams sponsored by healthy food companies isn't something you'd see in 1974?
Maybe
more likely it would be the Hungry Man
Pizza,
dinner
beer,
and
cigarettes, liquor.
You're right.
Those are the days. But so for the Grand Slams, when you look at the numbers you get from a slam, you look at it and say Rogers puts in, I don't know the numbers for sure, but when you think about the production and running an entire slam, you're probably looking at anywhere from $2 to $3 million to produce a slam and put it all together and do all the TV numbers. And you're talking about 11 broadcasts typically from these events, and average numbers somewhere in the 300,000 range, with several of those games in TV time slots that don't even come close to those kinds of numbers. 9 a.m. on Thursday morning Eastern time, and you're drawing 150,000 eyeballs to the curling game or more is huge numbers for somebody like Sportsnet.
Well, and what happens if you can start to expand into other markets outside of Canada? Does Rogers own that ability to?
Well, they own the slam, so they can choose what they want to do, but it doesn't necessarily improve their market. They can try and resell it. It's possible that the U.S. Is interested in picking some of this up. Like, they've been sniffing around.
Well, what about the Asian market with hundreds of millions of potential eyeballs, right?
Yeah, there's discussions going there. We're looking at growing the World Curling Tour out there with the eye on potentially taking the Grand Slams in that direction as well. With 8 events, we're going to need more locations to host them at the same time.
Have you spent some time out there, Colleen, and seen recently the growth in Asia?
I haven't spent time in Asia in terms of I've been to Asia, but not for curling. If there's one thing I've noticed just being at the Olympics last year was how few people are curling generally in the other countries. Like, Russia has a program, but yet they don't have very many curlers. The depth isn't there. It seems the same way when I am with the Asian teams, that there's not a lot of them. So the growth and depth isn't there. I think that's something the World Curling Federation has to look at, especially with the revenue every country gets from the IOC. I think people have to start looking at ways of making the sport deeper and stronger, so that it becomes a little like a PGA event that, except for Buddy that dominates, I can't remember his name right now, that you have a lot of people who could challenge rather than just the usual suspects week after week.
I think it's like golf in the same regard, though, that in order to play the sport, it takes an incredible investment up front for someone to be able to go do what might actually be relatively inexpensive for them. So you need to get rocks, you need to build clubs, you need to make ice, you need to do all these things. To play soccer, or what the world knows as football, just involves a ball. If you want to be a track runner, you just need a pair of runners. Or if you just want to run in your bare feet, you can do that also. So I think there's a length of time that it takes for something like, I'm sure golf, as an example, took many years. If you went back and looked at the history of the growth of the game in Asia, it didn't happen overnight, and it took a long, long time, and it's continuing. I think curling has an opportunity.
We're seeing that in Asia right now. I know in Japan there's probably, I believe there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 15 clubs in Japan. And from what I've been led to believe, everybody enters playdowns.
So it's not like Canada anymore.
That's great.
Everybody takes their crack at it because it's something to do. And next year we could have as many as 10 events in Japan and potentially some more in Korea, China, and maybe even New Zealand. And it's a great start to getting the growth going. Korea is really starting to invest in the game as well, and I think they're trying to invest into kind of a model where you see people play the game, not just one team. Like Japan has a playdown to be the national champion. Korea does the same. This isn't a selection process in either of those countries. They do a full playdown for the team. So there is some opportunity there. There was rumors over the summer of an event in Korea where they were giving away $150,000. And Mark Callan was there doing the ice. I don't know if you know Mark or not, from Kays of Scotland, and he's kind of the ice maker who travels the world. And I think he spends more time in the airplane than actually on the ground. But I haven't been able to confirm all the details. But they were giving away a lot of money, and it was a domestic only event. And I think the investment is starting to be there, and the game has the opportunity. Asia is where the game's going to grow. I think the USA has some potential, and it's coming, but it's going to be slow. But Asia has the potential to explode, and very quickly, I think.
Well, again, I think quickly is relative. We still need to get, in terms of what Colleen's saying, people playing the game. I think you're right. It could explode in terms of viewership, but that's not necessarily the same. And again, I think we can
it already dominates on viewership.
Yeah, we could debate the value either way. Actually, I had a question for Colleen, just thinking of this, because you've seen such changes in the game. You talked about the Lassie.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? And I guess this is kind of where we're at. How do you feel about it? And is this anywhere you thought we would end up?
About what?
Just in terms of the growth of the game and the Olympic piece of it. And if you go back to the 70s when you were starting out and playing in your first Lassie, I mean, is it beyond what you might have thought? Is it
beyond? I think it is beyond so far. I mean, when you're playing the sport and you're at the club and it's a great sport, you can't figure out, jeepers, why don't other people see this potential, right? And there's no question that, first off, the sponsors who saw the potential of it, that's kind of the first kudos to that. And that then television saw this is incredible on TV, especially the wireless mics. I'll never forget the year the wireless mics came out. I'm going to say I was in the 84 final against Connie Laliberty. And I refused to wear the mic, but they were busy trying to convince us that you needed to wear the mic, that these mics are important. And you kind of thought, a mic? Like it was unheard of. Yeah. I mean, still show me a sport where anybody's using a mic. So it's that feeling that you're right there with the players that television has been able to give people because you have wireless. Eventually, they made it a rule that you had to use mics. But no, I don't think I could envision where it's at right now, that it is this strong and popular. I always kind of knew, just because I worked in television, that yes, the numbers were strong, that people were crazy about watching curling. But where it's going, it's kind of the sky's the limit for it right now.
But the flip side being that it's struggling at a grassroots level, and there's so many reasons in this country you can point to, whether it's demographics, it's all these other pieces of it. So that's one part of it that we do talk about a lot of times, and that becomes a bit of the flip side. I think the game will continue to expand the way it plans on, and I don't know that the CCA is responsible, or that organizations can do everything. They have to work at trying to keep people in the game. And I liked your comments at the beginning that events like the Brier and the Scotties are still events that have a national exposure to people who don't necessarily curl, and can draw in those juniors.
Yeah. I think we need more kind of training centers like the Saville Center across. And, now that it's an Olympic sport, it's got to kind of branch out a bit more. There needs to be more emphasis in the training department of this. Forget when they win a Scotties or a Brier. Tap into them when they're in the really young age, to say, look, here's the sport. We train, we practice. You train, you practice. Make them just ready. I think we need more training, real training facilities to help grow the sport between hook the kids when they're 12 and 13 and 14. We all know examples, and I am one of them, that after school every day, I just went to the curling club. I'm sure everybody in Winnipeg did the same thing. I know Kevin Martin did that. Like, it's what you did. Now kids have, first off, the parents insist on driving them everywhere, so nobody can walk to the curling club anymore. They're competing with soccer. They're competing with hockey. They're competing with a lot of other sports. So, but at our club now, the kids can go after school. Not many show up anymore, right? So you need to hook the kids when they're that 12 to 16 age group. This is fantastic. Get in there and love it. And I don't know that we're doing enough right now to do that. And I think part of the problem is that the clubs are all private. So does the manager of the club or the curling coordinator of the club want to take that on? No, they've got a full-time job. Running a club is hard enough. The curling coordinator is a volunteer job. I think the impetus for it has to come from something bigger. And that would be, from the CCA, making sure everybody's got at one club, sort of the way it is in Manitoba, or my understanding of it is, Connie Laliberty at the club she's at facilitates the training for the kids. And when I've been at a few of the Canadian juniors lately, those Manitoba kids are amazing. So you need somebody like that in every single province, doing that same kind of groundwork and hooking the 12 to 16-year-old kids.
Yeah, I think some of the struggles that curling faces is the same struggles that all sports face across the country, and that's general participation rates of adults in sport are down in everything, and same thing with kids as well, and a lot of that has to do with time. I think parents who work two jobs, mom and dad both work. There was an interesting study I was reading about this the other day, where families where both parents work full time, and families where it's a single parent family have about a similar participation rate. Families where one partner works full time and the other one works part time actually have the highest participation rate. And it comes down to time to be involved in it, and to actually bring your kids out. There's two different issues. It's not always just money that holds people back from being able to participate, people working, people are working longer days, more, there's more demand on, on time at work now. All these businesses are now squeezing the bottom line and expecting their employees to do more. And I think if we look at the problem as a big picture, I think we need to think back and say I don't think it's necessarily a failure of curling. It's the new reality. And I think we have to find a way to adapt to it and do the best we can.
I will give you an example. I will give you an example, though. Here in Nova Scotia, they've just built 2 new indoor soccer facilities for year-round play, right? So it's a kind of, if you build it, they will come. Ditto for Tennis Canada, who's, they're capitalizing on Milos Raonic and Eugenie Bouchard, yes. But even prior to that, they started building new facilities. One big indoor facility, the Lorne Avenue Center in Fredericton. Here in Halifax, they built the Daniel Nestor facility. Yes, there was private money in there as well. But they are hooking kids in there to play. And I think it's sort of, if you build it, they will come. And there's a lot of competition for parents' time when they're looking at, what am I going to put my kid into? What sport? Yeah. I think if they knew how inexpensive curling was, they would kind of go, yes, to curling. The problem is it's still not, except for Saturday morning curling at our curling club, it's not set up to enhance junior curling. You really need to kind of lock in somewhere to a program.
You need great people in the clubs who do the work.
Yeah,
who put the time in. And you know what? The clubs that have those people are successful. There's lots of clubs across this country that are doing well. Mm-hmm. And it's because they run their facility like a business and they have a business plan and marketing and they do all those things to make sure that they get out there. Whereas, the clubs that still run it like we used to be able to do with sport, open the doors and people would show up, they're finding it hard to be successful.
Well, one of the things with curling, it's often been this really close-knit community. I mean, I've managed to move across Canada to different provinces, and I sort of already would immediately have friendships because I'm a curler. But at the same time, I was introduced through my family, through my parents. People who aren't also look at it and see it a bit as a club, and then there can be a bit of a fear almost of stepping into it. It looks real friendly from the inside, but I don't know that it's always seemed that friendly from the outside. And it's harder because if you want to do it, you need 3 other people. You got to, figure those things out. I think a lot of people have done a lot of work to try to bring people and try to introduce them. But the traditional way has always been, you're a kid, your parents make you and attract you to the game. But I think more and more we need to realize that that's not enough. That's not enough to attract those people. We need to get the kids whose parents have just seen it on TV. And I think the opportunities
programs are out there.
Yeah, they are. No, I agree.
Programs are out there, and it's it takes people at the club level to champion this within their own facility.
I do think I think the CCA does a lot of so many great things. But when I'm watching the numbers slip in our junior programs, realizing that kids are competing for, indoor soccer, video games, snowboarding. We've got the fabulous new oval they've just built here in Halifax for skating. There's a lot competing for the time, and I just think a little more structure in a junior program overall, rather than it always being the club's responsibility to find the volunteers to run it. Something like, again, I'm going to go back to what Connie Laliberty runs in Manitoba. One person overseeing that every day this training is available to you. When I've been at the Saville Center, it's like, whoa, this is amazing. That, there are coaches there. There are tools to make you better. I think we need a little bit more of that at the junior level.
Kind of like the Club Pro idea.
Yeah. Except don't ask the clubs to do that, because the clubs are strapped. There is no money at the club level. They're all replacing, rocks. They're putting on roofs on the building. Their boilers are going
or they're
clubs are just
or they're closing down, some of them, right?
Yeah, the juniors,
they're all on the edge financially.
Yeah, and I guess juniors, running a junior program does not generate immediate return on investment either.
No, it won't.
It is
But
investment
to
in
keep
the
building
game,
the game
but
in
it's
Canada.
Maybe there's some
Keep building the
funding,
game in Canada. I think you have
some
to.
funding available to hire more, hire some young people, and there's young curlers. I'm talking about like 20-year-olds who probably could work a job where they rotate through clubs over the course of a month. And you get that kind of person to they're paid by the association, and their job is to go around and run these sort of programs.
I would take it a step further. I mean, I think why Manitoba works is Connie Lalaberty. I think in Alberta, I would be getting paying a Kevin Martin. I would be getting Kelly Law in British Columbia. Like, there's so many great curlers that have so much knowledge, that have put in, that just understand the game. I would, if you're going for excellence, get the people who have won the Brier or won the Scotties or come close.
I'm thinking about young people like the Caitlin Laws of the world, and that aren't necessarily full-time employed or don't have the time to do that. Whereas if they're out at clubs and stuff, they actually do that in Manitoba right now. Reed Carruthers and Caitlin, and I believe there's probably a couple other guys that do it, and they'll do it's sponsored by the Manitoba Curling Association, and they'll go from club to club to club, and they don't do it all the time, but it's a series where they'll do it over there's a couple of weeks where they do that, and they'll go from and do little clinics at these clubs, and for them, they work part-time as it is, and for them the kind of income is great to supplement their curling revenues as well.
Yeah,
and we need more of that.
More provinces have to be doing that kind of stuff, I think.
So we've been not just maybe to move on a bit, because we've been chatting for 45 minutes. We haven't even talked about the Scotties. We haven't even talked about all of the excitement that's been going on and across the country with all the provincials, and some great coverage on Sportsnet. And we've got a lineup that's set up now. Colleen, you unfortunately aren't participating this year.
No, but hopefully the seniors, but it is a great field, amazing.
You almost convinced me that you're excited about seniors.
I am excited about seniors.
Are you? Okay.
Actually,
okay.
I just love playing, right? I love playing. Just let me keep playing. That's all.
Well, have you got a doubles team?
Doubles?
Yeah, the mixed doubles.
You mean mixed doubles?
Mixed doubles. I hear their teams are starting to form now for the events coming up.
Possibly Korea.
Yeah.
You know what? I remember playing mixed doubles during the Continental Cup, and just never loving it. It's different.
Is that a nice way of saying you dislike something, to say I never loved it?
I'm sure people are going to get really good at it and love it. But to me, mixed doubles, I remember having covered a few Olympic games, sometimes it's synchronized diving or synchronized trampolining. They make these extra sports just because, well, they've already built the facility. What else? How else can we milk it to get one more medal event, right?
Mm-hmm. They got the
but
athletes
it doesn't
there
necessarily
already.
mean it's always it doesn't mean it's a good thing. It's just this bonus throw on thing, and it just seems like the flukiest thing in the world to win or lose. I don't,
I've said requirement for the mixed doubles should only be with either married couples or engaged or divorced, whatever, and that would create a
guaranteed divorce at the end of it. I'm sure.
Well, exactly, and that would create a lot more interesting dynamic in the during the event, and you mic both players, and you get to hear them argue about the shot and maybe about what happened last Wednesday when she was supposed to drive the kids to soccer and didn't, and those. I mean, I think that would make it a televised event that people would watch for sure.
Yeah, I think you're taking it to the next level now.
Yeah, it's you know what, to be honest, I like the idea of another event in the Olympics and anything to grow curling, and it will take some time to evolve though. It's probably a more athletic version of curling than we have now. And I think
I don't think it's really curling.
Because you sweep, you throw, you jump up and you sweep your own stones. It's very un-Canadian.
Yeah, but the one comment I'd make, Gerry, is that there's no 3-on-3 hockey. It's like, oh well, we have the regular gold medal hockey. Why don't we have a little like a shinny game too, and we'll have the guys go out without equipment and play 3-on-3. They don't.
Although they are toying with the idea of taking more skaters off the ice in the overtime.
Well, but that would change the existing event. I guess the point being is they're not creating a separate event to create more medals to make it different. So in that regard, it does seem a little strange, right? We see curling as, a competition amongst teams at a certain level. I can sense that. Yeah, I look at this and I go, it's kind of dumbing it down a little.
My only argument there though is we're not taking away from the sport. We're not like taking away mixed doubles, for example. They're actually expanding mixed because they're starting the mixed world championships next year. So, anything that adds more to the game, I'm all for that.
Yeah, as am I. But I will say that there've been a few new sports at the Olympics where they kind of let's tack this on to this sport. Change the rules a little bit, cut down the players, and as I said, my best examples are synchronized diving. It's never the cachet, it's never the big event. It's just this other add-on. It feels add-on.
So it almost feels a little like, are we cheapening the curling because we're saying, oh, this is a sport that needs another little made-up sub-sport to help capture it, and we as people who've grown up in the game don't feel that way. Right?
Yeah.
We feel that it should stand on its own. Yeah.
Yeah. At the Olympic level, they figure, well, this is an easy way to add another event, add a few more medals, and we already have the existing facilities. So it kind of meets all that criteria. And who knows? Maybe it's going to be the next best thing.
It'd be interesting to see where it fits into the schedule, though. You work the Sochi games and curling, I think, takes 11 days out of the Olympics.
It's a long time.
Yeah, it's the longest, and it's morning till night. I remember being in Vancouver, and
I know
you don't get to see anything else. Yeah,
so although I remember covering the Albertville games in 1992 when they were still a demo sport. Julie Sutton and Kevin Martin were the teams, and they lost the ice at the plant that year. It was such a debacle. So they went from 4 sheets down to 2 sheets. And I was doing it with Don Dugan. And we used to have to show up for the first game. I'm going to say it was 7 a.m. And we went right through till midnight because they were down to 2 sheets. It was crazy. So that once mixed doubles comes in, they'll find a way.
Oh, which one was that again? Sorry, Colleen. That was in
Albertville in 1992.
That's the one that actually do you know why the 2 sheets were lost? Do you know the story?
I was told they had a problem with the plant.
It was a terrorist attack. There was a group that didn't want it was actually in Doug Maxwell's book, and I wrote about it in my ebook.
Really?
And it was actually some terrorists who didn't want the Olympics, right? So, the Olympics comes in, it costs a lot of money. There's a lot of people that there's a backlash oftentimes that say this would be better spent on the environment or less fortunate whatnot. So there was a group of that didn't want the Olympics, and so for some reason they didn't want to attack hockey, they didn't want to attack downhill skiing. They thought, let's go after curling, and they actually plugged up the pipes. And so
I did not know that.
Yeah, and so
probably a lack of security at the curling.
Well,
they were thinking, who would attack curling?
Well, that was probably it. Maybe there was a lot of security in the skiing event, no security at curling clearly. And while they were building the facility, because I guess that was the other thing. It had to be built ahead specifically for the Olympics, and they sabotaged it. So it's a good thing they left a couple of sheets open. I guess that was at least nice of them. But it was an interesting little tidbit.
That is a good tidbit.
Yeah. So back to the Scotties. Before we let you go, why don't we just have a quick chat about it? I mean, it's an event I'm sure that's very near and dear to you. And I mean, that sponsorship has been around for. Well, yeah. You said what's the math there, Gerry? 82 to it's 32 years, right? 33 years. Unbelievable. Yeah, they're the longest, I think, consecutive running sponsor in sport right now. Definitely women's sport, but it might be for a Canadian sport, all sport.
Yeah.
But anyhow,
really
it's
is
an
huge.
amazing field. I love the top three are pretty obvious, with obviously Rachel, Jennifer, and Val, and then it's the Stephanie Lawton. The
I think they're
question of
close.
yeah, but and for some reasons when events are in Saskatchewan, the Saskatchewan team, maybe it's too much pressure. I don't know, but it's tough for them.
They've also had a really difficult season too. Stephanie just came back for the provincials. She had a baby in the fall, and the rest of the team played the tour season. Marlies Kasner played only part-time, and I'm not even sure they qualified in anything.
Yeah, I will say
so.
having a baby is the best thing you could ever do. It makes you powerful. Like, if you look
Mentally,
at, let's take Shannon Schmerler, Sandra Schmerler right off the bat. That was an amazing, she gave birth and 8 weeks later or something was busy winning the Olympic trials in 1997 and then on to gold. Jennifer Jones, baby, bam. I mean, Jennifer Jones, I've never seen her play better. I've watched her forever, and man, she's golden now that she has a baby. So Stephanie might get some of that magical baby energy.
Is it kind of the case where it kind of puts life into perspective, and
it does.
You take some of the pressure off you? You realize that, hey, you know what, this isn't as big of a deal as I made it out to be in the past, and you relax a little bit. That's more important to be in the hack relaxed, right?
You sure it's not more focused effort in practicing because you want to maybe spend a little less time with the child that's screaming and needs your attention all the time? And so it's your one chance to get out and talk to grown-up people and maybe enjoy that. I know.
I'm not going there.
Yeah, I think it's the perspective. I think it gives you a good perspective. So anyway, Stephanie, Stephanie's good. I was watching Marianne Arsenault win Nova Scotia, and she looked really strong.
She's got a good young team in front of her, I think. Very driven players who I think are going to do pretty well at the Nationals. And of course, I got to throw the Ontario team into the ring too. They're big giant curling zone sponsorship, winning the Ontario Scotties over Sherry Madaw last weekend. That was pretty fun to see a team that's been together for 20 years.
Yeah, that's great.
Julie Hastings, just in case.
Julie Hastings.
Julie Hastings.
We're putting together a far from home video on them that'll hopefully be out before the Scotties to kind of tell their story, and it's pretty cool.
Well, and as a person now in Alberta for the last 15 years, I think we're in pretty good standing. Val Sweeting seems to be having a pretty good run this season.
I think Val has actually taken her games to the next level. I would almost go out there and say she is the most clutch skip in Canada right now. When there needs to be a big shot made, she makes it. The draw to the button, the hit. Like it almost goes back to when she first came out of juniors and won her first Alberta title. She played in the final in 2010 for the 2010 Scotties in Alberta, and made a run back to win the event right near the end. As like a 21, 22-year-old, I believe.
Yeah.
She has ice in her veins, and you can kind of see that now, and her game has really evolved. I think she's ready to win it this year, to be honest.
Yeah, I would agree. It all comes down, winning's such a hard thing, right? I'd hate to put money on anybody anytime because so much can go on in a final, and so much can go on through the week. But she's just so poised and so clutch. It's great to see.
Well, if you do want to put money, you can chat with me about it offline. I have some pretty good mathematical formulas that can help with that.
Really?
The field is great. There was some talk about, it's the greatest field since such and such a year, and
I believe that year was 1997. And if you want to search it out, it's actually on YouTube. The Canadian Curling Association's been putting a lot of games up on the internet for people to go watch, and you can actually watch the final between Alison Goring and Sandra Schmerler, and good old our friend here, Colleen, was actually on the broadcast there too, and the banter between you and Don Duguid was always pretty classic to listen to as well.
I can imagine. But I'd like to. I'm trying to remember that final, and I'm having a hard time remembering it.
I think Sander jumped out to a 3-0 lead early, and then a few mistakes here and there, and it came down to be fairly tight by the end of the game. And but when you look at that field, you had Marilyn Bodo in this Team Canada, I believe. You had Kelly Owen, who's Kelly Law now, out of BC. You had oh man, I'm gonna miss some of these teams at the same time too. You were there.
Where was it held at?
Well, the Agrodome in Vancouver, I believe, on the PNE.
Yes. Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, that was. That was a good Scotties.
I think sometimes you don't necessarily know whether it's the greatest field ever until 10 years later when everybody starts accomplishing things. And I think you see that with this field almost. You got a lot of youth involved at the same time too.
Well, the other thing you could say too is that the quality of the play is at a different level than it was back then. Certainly then you'd have some of the best of that era, but this is a whole new era as well. And as we've talked, there's been a lot of talk that the women's game maybe in Canada was slipping, or that we were maybe more on par than the men versus the rest of the world, or maybe even slipping behind. And I don't know, what are your thoughts, Colleen, what in terms of the state of the women's game versus the world?
I think it's always been a dogfight between Canada, Scotland, and Sweden. Now you could throw Switzerland into the mix for an extra country. But I think if you look at the first World Championships in '79, Sweden and Scotland have always been traditionally really strong countries. And, you know, even at the Olympics last year, it still, to me, looked like it's going to be Sweden, Scotland, and Canada. And I think that's how it's all. I think that's just been kind of the ongoing trend. And I think slipping, no, but I think at any Canadian World Championship, when you look at the losses the Canadian women have had at the Worlds, I think there's been a couple of reasons for those losses. Part of it, first off, it's still a new event. I mean, I remember curling in my first World Championship in 1982 in Geneva, and it was held at the most horrific, beautiful arena, beautiful, but there were windows everywhere, and the rink was sloped, and it was just sort of this, whoa, right? Meanwhile, at the men's event in Garmisch Park in Kurgan that year, it was held in the right event. They had a Canadian ice maker, so it was sort of a different standard for the men.
Yeah, I think that has changed a lot in probably the last 10 years.
It has.
Europe
So
has
now
good ice conditions now, and
yeah,
you go there and you don't worry about ice anymore.
A couple of years ago, Jennifer Jones was curling at the Worlds in Scotland, and it was right beside a swimming pool, and the humidity was nuts at the curling rink. Like, it was horrific conditions.
You know what? That's already going back 10 years. 2005.
That's only 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
It about 10? Yeah. So it's. I think Canadian women have always been really strong. It's just that sometimes when you get to these World Championships, the conditions are nowhere near what you think they should be. So
that's
since what I think.
Yeah, it's been since 2008 that the Canadian women have won a gold medal at the World Championships.
It has been since 2008?
I believe so. And Jennifer, of course, won the gold medal at the Olympics, so that's, probably bigger than the Worlds. But at the same time, you're seeing, a lot of other countries are professionalizing their programs as well. So like the Eve Muirheads play curl full time. The Asian countries are typically full-time curlers over here all the time. The Russians are doing the same thing. Whereas where I think that there isn't enough money in the women's game yet, but I think that's starting to change now with the Grand Slams to focus enough energy and effort on curling closer to full time. Whereas the men have
I think a lot of curlers are curling full time here too, though. I think a lot of people are, they have their jobs, but the carding of athletes now I think Canada's doing a great job in the kind of the carding of 8 teams now that get funding, and certainly the sponsorship for teams is good. So that takes the pressure off of teams to I think it's time anyway, right? I think it's strong. I think the Scotties field looks really great, and
so any predictions?
It'll be interesting.
Colleen,
I'm too smart to predict. I mean, predictions are for losers, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples right now. First off, nobody ever picked us to win ever. Even after we had won 4 Canadian championships, people were, I think they were lucky. So, no, I have no – and then I'll never forget here when the Olympic trials were here, Brad Gushue was picked dead last by everybody, and, of course, he won Olympic gold.
Actually, I believe Jeff Stoughton told him he would never win with Russ Howard.
There you. Yeah. I don't think. Yeah. So I don't buy into predictions because the Brier week and the Scotties week are really unique. They're long. They're pressure filled for all of the teams who go in with the hope of winning, and it's not. It doesn't necessarily always come down to ability. It comes down to the mental toughness. Who can stand up to that kind of pressure all the time, and certainly. When you look at Rachel, Jennifer's team, and Val's team, they're showing that they can handle that kind of pressure all the time. But yet, it's a hard week. It's hard to know who's going to rise all the time.
So you're picking Jones then? Okay, Gerry, who do you like? No, I tend to agree with you. But Gerry, do you have? I mean, you've seen a lot of these teams. You've seen the development over the season. Who do you think?
To be honest, I think it's a 3-way coin flip. You could put about the same chance on all 3 teams, the top 3 to win the event. I think I suggested Val Sweeting is ready to win it, so I think that puts her in that group now. Jennifer has been unbelievable all year, outside of one event, I think, the Canada Cup, of course, where everybody saw her not do so well. And then, the commentators talking about how they're having a down year and all that, which is kind of silly considering they won everything prior to that event that they played pretty much. And, I think they've had that, post-Olympic, they've been strong post-Olympics. And then, of course, Rachel and her team, there's been some adjustments with the new player. I think, for what she, I think there's still a learning process with how she throws the rock, and I think Allison might be a better thrower still at this point with syncing with the team with the player who left, but Joanne certainly brings a sweeping prowess to that team, and I think that has increased. So again, they're strong as well. So I can't pick a team out of those 3.
Different question then. Outside of those 3, are there 1 or 2 teams that might surprise us and make a final or maybe even finish the job and or go deep into playoffs? There's always sort of every year, especially Scotties, we tend to see that, right? There's sort of a team that comes out of nowhere and surprises.
There's always a Cinderella team. Almost always. There's always a Cinderella team that you go, whoa, they're just magic. They're making everything. And I would say for those teams, it would be Stephanie Lawton's team, and I would not write off Marianne Arsenault. I think she's a shot maker.
Yeah, I'm going to stick close to home here with the Ontario girls. They've played. They've been in a few of the slams over the last couple of years. They've put a little bit more work into the game. That's the Julie Hastings team, and they were the best team all week in Penetanguishene at the Ontario Scotties as well. So I think if they play like they did at the Ontario Scotties, they can get to the final. And of course, when you get there, you never know what happens, right?
And just again, remind me, Gerry, who's playing who to play into the event?
So we've got 3 teams playing in the pre-qualifying event, and all teams with some name recognition. You've got Sarah Colton from the Yukon, good young team that has made it deep into playoffs and some World Curling Tour events. Kerry Galusha out of the Northwest Territories, and then Tracy Horgan. So only one of those teams is going to qualify.
One thing that's kind of unfortunate, I thought about it earlier when we were talking, is that the pre-qualification happens right before the event. And I recognize, I guess that has to occur based on having the current team, and you have to wait for those provincial playdowns to end. But further to what Colleen talked about, it's a shame if we don't get those fans. We don't get the Nova Scotia fans planning their vacations and having those Blue Nosers at an event. So it would be almost better if somehow that pre-qualification could have taken place earlier. I don't know if it could take place at the end of the previous year with somehow they determine that. I mean, I know this is maybe a nice because it could help, grow the game in certain areas because that haven't yet been to these events, but it just seems like a big mess. And I'm excited because I'm going to go down to Calgary. I'm going to go to the first ever pre-qualification for a Brier, but I have no idea what to expect. And I do think, based on the way it's structured, it would almost be nice if they did kind of decide it ahead of time.
Yeah. So anyways, we should probably think about wrapping it up there. We've been going pretty long, and
yeah, you gave us a ton of. Did you want to go on longer, Colleen? Because we're well past our.
I thought I was going to have to answer a math question, but that's fine.
No. Give you the skill testing question just for the sake of it. 1 + 2 + 5 is.
Oh.
No, but I will send you a free copy of my book that you can read on a computer or any other tablet type device, and then I will send you a list of questions following.
List of questions. Okay, to make sure I read the book. Okay,
exactly. Good. Yes. Anything else before we go then, Colleen? We've really enjoyed having you.
No, great to talk. Great to talk to you guys.
Thanks for joining us. Gerry, anything else?
I think that's it for me. I think my computer's about to die, so.
So with that, we better take off. And until next time, thanks for joining us.